Christina, welcome to Wealth Talk today.
Thank you for inviting me, Chris. It's really exciting for me to be here today.
Yeah, no, we're looking forward to hearing more about your business, Christina. And your business is, of course, the property VA. And many of our listeners on Wealth Talk are in the property world. They are property investors. So we thought it'd be really nice to hear from you and your experiences of working with property investors and how specifically you're helping them to create more time and more freedom. And we're going to go into some of the reasons behind why you started your business. So why don't we start there, Christina, and give our listeners a little bit of a background to yourself?
Absolutely. And thank you for that question. I wasn't always called, well, the business wasn't always called the Property VA. It had been more like a generic, I would say, bland VA sourcing service. But when the pandemic hit, I found an opportunity to basically niche my offering and niche my target market, seeing as 90% of the clients I was working with were already property investors. I did a quick pivot, changed my previous business name, and now called it the Property VA, and focused on just helping property investors succeed more in their property businesses.
Yeah, and why was it that 90% of your clients were in property? Is that because you're in property yourself, or were you hanging out with a lot of other investors?
Probably both of those are true. So I didn't intend to run or start a VA business before I got into property. But once I was within that network, I did end up hanging out a lot with quite a few property investors in networking meetings. It would be a natural conversation that would come up, them asking me, so where am I from? And when I mentioned that I'm from the Philippines, that always, um, you know, it got a lot of interest from investors because either they themselves work with VAs from the Philippines, or that they know somebody who works with a VA, or they might be slightly jealous that they haven't got a VA from the Philippines, and so can I help them find one? So essentially, it just started by me informally helping a few investors with finding VAs from the Philippines, from which point I thought I can start a business out of this,
Yeah.
and that's how it started.
Yeah, so identifying a problem there that people were having and offering a solution, which is always the starting point, right? So before because we're going to focus a little bit on some of the common mistakes today that people make before they actually hire a VA. To help people, get ready for that moment and make sure that they do it the right way. But could we just perhaps run through some of the most common tasks that a property investor might use a VA for?
I think for the most part, what investors approach me for in terms of needing a VA for help, it's almost always the most time consuming and low value tasks that are just not the best use of their time. And it's stopping them from focusing more on the side of properties that bring in the most value and return for their time. Typically, this would be either spending time on social media, responding to questions, or maybe posting on social media. That's generally a task that a lot of investors find tedious to do. Um, it's that, and often bookkeeping, admin, and email management. Um, Myself, I found that it's not just the boring tasks that are best outsourced to VAs. I found that it's it's the lead generation tasks that are as well boring and time consuming, but not just low value, because they actually return a lot back to the investor in terms of the opportunities that then the VA finds for them. It's really a task that I um, would like to encourage more investors to discover and utilize when using a VA, and not just using a VA to answer emails or use a VA um, to go on Facebook and respond to comments and messages. You can actually use your VA to bring in tens and thousands or hundreds of thousands of pounds of opportunities to your business.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. So, have you found, Christina, actually, in some cases, when your clients have started working with you and your team of VAs, that in fact you're almost educating them a little bit in how to improve their businesses in terms of the systems, the processes, the way that certain things are done?
I like that term, education. I, I, I do. I understand that what I am doing is, in fact, educating my clients a little bit, although I don't say the word education. I probably just say maybe I can guide you better on how to work with your VA more effectively um, and utilize them, to bring more opportunities to you. But you're right. I've heard far too many stories of property investors being frustrated with their VAs, and ultimately, a lot of them actually are open and honest enough to recognize that maybe the frustration is caused by themselves and not just the VA. And this is where, as calling myself the property VA, I need to look at both sides of this working relationship. One is the investor who who's got an objective, who works a certain way and has like maybe a cultural and educational background that is far, far, far different from where their VA is coming from. So the Philippines is a third world country, even though the VAs are, they're very highly skilled and highly motivated to work as best as they can for the property investors. And still, failure can happen if both are not managing their expectations in the right way, so that their working relationship is one wherein everyone is happy with everybody's work output.
So I think that leads us on really nicely to giving some tips really for our listeners as to, what should they be doing in order to be ready to take on a VA. And you talked about some frustrations there. And I know from my own experiences in the past, when I took on a VA, my first VA was a few years ago, and I found myself almost struggling each day to find new tasks, and it became almost a task in itself to find tasks. So how can someone go avoid that happening?
Okay, I think specifically with the frustration of finding tasks as being task itself, I would say that comes in with my first tip, which is having systems in place. Um, with systems, people are often scared of that word because they think it's very technical. You must have some kind of um, super technical or specially designed system in place before you can call something a system. Does that make sense? When actually there's just maybe low tech versions of what any business owner, any property investor can start implementing, either well before they hire a VA or soon after they hire a VA at the very latest. One of the best systems that a property investor who's looking to work with a VA can use, and there's nothing technical about this, you don't need to sign up for any software or take on a course to learn how to do this, is creating a default diary. A default diary is where you as a business owner can tame the mess of delegation, because today you might say, can you work on my email list, and can you do some bookkeeping, can you get on Facebook, can you get on LinkedIn, and then tomorrow the VA sent you a message, what am I going to do today? And then you go, oh, I don't know, maybe you can start to go on Rightmove and find this and that property. And So you're not only um, not utilizing your VA's time and skills the best, you're also eating up your time just to have to think about what to delegate to a VA. But with a default diary, and it's very simple, really, it's nothing technical at all. All you're doing is you're blocking tasks and times together. So it could be a daily blocking or a weekly blocking. A weekly blocking might look like Mondays are marketing days, Tuesdays are bookkeeping days, or a daily blocking might look like 9 to 12. I need you to be on social media and just do social media work. And then in the afternoons, I need you to go back onto back end and admin and sort out some filing. Essentially, what a default diary does is, even without any technical knowledge of how to create an outsourcing system, you've tamed the mess of delegation just by blocking time, um, creating blocks of time to focus your VA's work into and regular schedule as well. So every Monday she's doing this. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to spend half an hour of your time communicating instructions to the VA. So that's one of my favorite tools to work with a VA.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. And we know that often people feel like they're just too busy to even take on a VA, right? They're just too busy. They haven't got time to even think about it. Um, do you ever say to people about actually tracking their own time? So understanding the tasks that they're doing every day, every week, every month. And then what are some of the first things? I think you maybe touched on them earlier, but some of the first things that they can start to release.
I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, because if you don't spend time to sort out um, your own, lack of time situation, does that make sense? In order for you to delegate to a VA, then you'll never get round to actually delegating to a VA to then solve this situation you're in. Um, and believe me, it's everyone's situation before they hire a VA. I think no one, almost, I've never heard of anybody at the point of, being organized before they hire a VA. So actually, your situation is probably more typical than you think. But having said that, how would you actually go about it? Because you're already time poor, and you need to even eat up even more time from your lack of time to work with a VA. For this type of investor, I would recommend that you don't have to delegate everything today. It's a bit like untangling a big ball of knots. You just have to attack one thing at a time. So this could be the most technical task that you can outsource to a VA. Would be a good place to start. So this could be a backlog of emails, or this could be your Google Drive is in such a mess right now, and with very few instructions, you can delegate that to the VA straight away, and that's already going to save a lot of your time. Just even knowing that there's a little bit more organization in your business, um, mentally, that frees up a lot of things, and so you can proceed with more clarity step by step. So you don't have to have everything organized before a VA starts. And this is where I think people stop themselves from wanting to delegate and outsource some business tasks, because they feel like, um, I need to have systems in place, or I need to be super organized, when actually uh, they're just going to stop you from actually achieving the very thing that you want to achieve. So start small. Start with the most time consuming but least skillful task that you can delegate to a VA.
So you say start small there, Christina. So what would you recommend to someone in terms of like how many hours or days per week they might need instead of just going straight in and having a full-time VA? How do you work with people? What are the first steps to kind of ascertain what's the right level of support they need?
I would recommend that business owners consider the cost aspect of hiring someone less than a part-time VA, because a part-time VA, although they've got 20 hours for you, and to some business owners that's more than they need, they only maybe need 5 or 10 hours. The cost of hiring a freelance VA from Fiverr or Upwork, for example, um, their hourly rate is what you can achieve by hiring someone who will work double the amount of time. So, yes, some investors might say, look, I haven't got the resources to work with a 20-hour VA a week. Um, but I would maybe, I mean, this all matters. Sorry, this all depends on the individual situation of the business owner. But I would recommend that if you're serious about really uh, freeing up your time and running your business like a business owner and not a self-employed person, that you do need to sit down and think about where can a VA most be of help sorting out and releasing that time off you. And 20 hours will soon be filled up with some tasks that you may not have, thought about that you can delegate. Um, so I'd seriously consider, not just hiring a freelance VA to attack some of those areas in your business, but because for the same price, you can take on a part-time VA. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Now, one of the other questions that people might have, Christina, and you may get asked this, is around security, trust. Where are the VAs? Obviously, they're in the Philippines, but how do we know where our information is? So, what would you say to anyone who's kind of worried or concerned about that aspect?
As with all other parts of delegation, you don't give everything out all at once. And, you know, there's a thing that says you never abdicate anything about your business when you delegate. So this would include very sensitive information or um, highly, critical information that you need to keep for yourself in business. Um, so yes, I would start small in terms of um, revealing and disclosing that information, and only ever delegating what your VA can handle today. So with information, for example, your VA doesn't need to know all the parts in your business that you know. Let's say details of your tenants who may be, let's say, vulnerable tenants, or details of contracts that you hold. Um, you don't need to disclose everything when your VA starts working with you. I don't know if that answers your question, but um, just in terms of information, they need they don't need everything to start working for you today. Uh, Having said that, of course, there needs to be um, all the robust security measures in place that you, as a business owner, would be the only person who can really say for certain what you need for your business. Um, I would never outsource that technical decision making to, let's say, someone from, well, your VA, for example. Like, you don't need to discuss this with your VA. I think you should get the proper advice from, the right people for that.
Yeah, and there's various password kind of tools online, such as LastPass. So you can give permissions, can't you, to different aspects of your business, different softwares and accounts and things like that. So
Yes, so a little bit at a time in terms of what you give your VA access to.
yeah.
If that includes using password softwares like LastPass, then yes.
Okay, so I think it's been really fascinating actually listening to your story of how you've built this business, Christina. And is there anything else that we've not covered which you think is important to share, especially around the aspect of getting ready for taking on your first VA?
Yes, and I do wish, if I can say one message to property investors out there looking to hire VAs, is before anything, before um, having systems in place, and before even thinking about being mindful of cultural perspectives of working with someone from a different country and a different culture, is for property investors to really understand how their expectations will matter when it comes to working with a virtual assistant. So that is to say, it's very important that property investors know and manage their expectations when working with a VA. It's easy to forget that as property investors, you may have spent thousands of pounds in educating yourself in property, whereas your VA will, no matter what training they've had, their their training will not match the property education that you received here in the UK. Likewise, VAs cannot replace you. So I often get stories from property investors where they've delegated this and that task of finding so and so sites on Nimbus, but then they come back and go, well, this isn't what I was asking for. But that's a bit like basically um, you've delegated the decision making to your VA in finding those sites, um, whereas to you, you probably didn't realize as a property investor that you were giving or handing over the business decision making to your VA by outsourcing, site finding. But there's a simple tweak to overcome that, and I would say as investors, we need to see a clear distinction between um, tasks where you give it as a checklist based task and tasks where you require the VA to make decisions on your behalf. And it's a simple distinction to make, but a very crucial one, especially when it comes to um, decisions that are, well, either going to cost your business thousands of pounds or cost you a lot more in lost opportunity or missed opportunity because your VA has filtered out sites that you've abdicated that decision making to her, basically.
Yeah. Christina, if any of our listeners want to find out more about the property VA services and social media, where are the places online that they should head to?
My website is thepropertyva.co.uk. Also, I'm on LinkedIn. Just type in Christina Osborne or the Property VA, and that will direct you to my page. I'm also very active on Facebook. If you at the Property VA on Facebook, that should bring up my page. And hopefully, I'd love to connect to more of your listeners.
Thanks so much for being a great guest on Wealth Talk today.